What's up, guys? Thank you so much for checking out this video. Wanted to go ahead and introduce myself as well as the channel. My name's James. I'm out of Greensboro, North Carolina. Currently, I am at Mercy Hill Church as a guitar team lead and music director at one of our campuses. This channel is basically my way of approaching guitar. At our church, we have usually one guitar on stage at each campus, so a lot of the song playthroughs will kind of help people figure out maybe what to play on a song if that's the situation they're in as well. Some other things we might get into, maybe some gear demos, theory talks, and definitely some tone talks as well. So just wanted to do a quick intro and welcome you guys to the channel. Let's get to the video. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the board itself. A couple things before we jump into some of the sounds. The actual board, I believe, is the Novo 24 from Pedal Train. I think that's pretty similar to their old PT2. It might live somewhere in the range of the PT2 to PT3, but this one is the Novo 24. I've done the flat board thing before. Looks really, really cool until you have to switch out a pedal and realize that you have to rewire, pretty much everything. So I love being able to run all of my power and most of my audio cables underneath. I'm not super neat with how I route stuff. I basically just kind of have it all underneath and then use some thinner Velcro strips to couple some cables together just so it's not everywhere. But overall, I've been really pleased with this board and going back to the angled board. The cables, actual audio cables on the board are a mix of the gear supply kit that they ran maybe 2-3 years ago and some lava cable as well. Obviously, gear supply not around anymore, but one of our techs over at the church bought a bunch of their cable and a bunch of their plugs. And I think it's a really similar system to the stuff Disaster Area is making now. So if we need a spare cable or if we do a board rebuild for any of our players, we've got some cable and plugs to help out there. So yeah, that's the board and the cables. The instrument cable that I'm using to come in, which is down there, the cable with the blue tape right there. I use Planet Waves American Stage cables for all of my instrument cables. I've used these for years. I haven't found a better cable for the price. I've played the Megami stuff, the really expensive stuff, and these are $15-20 now. And whenever they go on sale, I always make sure to just get a couple because it's always good to have backups for when you need them. For amps, I am running the Iridium from Strymon. Most of the sounds, actually all the sounds today will be on the Chime setting. The knobs are, if I can get a shot, I'll throw that up here, but in case not, the gain knob is pointing around 10 o'clock. Bass is around 1-2 o'clock. The middle knob, which acts as a cut knob for the Chime setting, is at 9 o'clock. The treble is at 11. And I've got the medium room setting on at around 11 or 12, just to give it a little bit of depth. That doesn't come through, obviously, really in a mix, but it just makes it feel more like a real amp. That's going stereo out, just direct to my interface, 1/4 inch out, straight into my interface. I am running David Hislop's IRs. There is a greenback on the right that you're hearing. If you're familiar with his IRs, that is the G12 mic'd with a 545 position 3. The speaker on the left is his ProSonic speaker. I believe it's called the G10, mic'd with a 545 as well, and that is position 3 too, or 3 as well. And I like that pairing a lot because the way I run things when I'm recording at home or when we're doing projects, I just use a direct solution. So I'll go stereo out of my board right here. This is a dual TS mono to TRS stereo. So I go stereo left, right out of the board and then into the Iridium. And then I'll use the left, right out there with those two different IRs. At church, though, we have the opportunity to run both direct and an amp if we want that as well. And I really like the feel of having an amp backstage, and that's actually really helped me dial in the direct sounds a lot because I can instantly compare it and see how it's breaking up compared to the real thing. So there I'll go left out goes to my hot rod backstage, and the right out will go to the Iridium, straight to the board. So that's kind of a rundown of the board and some of the sounds. I'm playing my 2004-ish. It was made somewhere around there. Epiphone Les Paul. That has El Rayos for the pickups, and then all the Emerson wiring and that kind of thing. I bought this off a friend, one of my really good friends, when I started playing guitar maybe 7-8 years ago. Kind of gutted everything and then swapped in some really cool stuff, and I really like how it plays and sounds. So let's go ahead and get into the actual pedals. My input comes in here. This is the interfacer from Goodwood Audio. Love this thing. I probably don't use it for all the capabilities it's made for. I don't really use the sum switch. I leave it in stereo all the time. But if you need it, and if you've got a gig where you can only run mono, that's a really, really easy fix, and you just run left out. After that is summed, I use the buffered input right here. There's a passive one as well. I just use the buffer. I'm not worried about long cable runs or anything like that. There's quite a few pedals on my board, but it's not like a huge spaceship or anything like that. So I don't have a dedicated buffer or anything along those lines, but I do come in the buffered input there. And then I run the 2 Strymon big box pedals in buffered bypass as well. So that should take care of all my buffer needs. Obviously, all the Boss stuff will have one as well. So I come out of that. I use the tuner out, so the tuner's always on. It's the Sonic Research Turbo Tuner. Really, really enjoy that pedal. It's sideways. I had to move a few things around, so it took a little bit of time to adjust to it being sideways as opposed to straight up. And if you're coming from a tuner where it's just a line going to the left or to the right, showing if you're flat or sharp, it takes a little bit of used to, with a strobe tuner, and you can see how it kind of, you can tell when you're sharp or flat, and when you're dead on, it'll stop moving. So super accurate. My buddy uses those for when he sets up guitars, so he said that's the most accurate kind of consumer tuner that he's used. And then, so we come out of the interfacer into my RC booster. This is one of the pedals that I leave on all the time. I don't love the idea of having like an always-on boost or an always-on drive to get your clean tone. Really, I just use this as kind of EQ to switch between guitars. So this Les Paul is probably my 1A, and then I've got a Tele that I really like. That's kind of my 1B. And on the face of it, those guitars sound pretty different. So the Tele being a little bit thinner, I might push a little bit more lows, might pull some highs out just to smooth it out a little bit. The Les Paul sounds pretty flat. I am pushing a little bit of a low-end boost. That somehow winds up smoothing out the highs in a way that I really like. So super versatile pedal. I know there's a version 2 out. We had one of those on like a demo board at church. I don't love that pedal, especially the second gain circuit that they added. Not the best sounding thing in the world to my ears, so I just use the version 1 and have had that pedal for a few years now. I should say too that the way that I have my board set up and my amp situation, whether that's stereo with the real amp and the direct solution or just the Iridium, is that as far as gain goes, I want all of my guitars to hit the rest of my board the exact same. That doesn't mean I want them to sound the same. I don't want my Strat to sound like my Les Paul, but I don't want to have to go change 4 pedals and where the knobs are to get the sound the same. So basically, when I switch from the Les Paul to the Strat or to the Tele or something like that, I'm not moving any other knob on any other pedals or my amps. Those stay dead same. The only thing I'm adjusting is going to be that RC booster, which is kind of my amp on my board. That's how I treat it. Next is going to be compression, and we'll kind of get to our clean tone here in a second. Both of these pedals just always stay on. Compressor pedal, I've been running more compression lately. I used to run it a bit more open, And then I really started liking kind of the tones that the guys over at Upper Room get, and theirs is they definitely have that snap to the front end of their notes. So this is the Keeley Compressor Plus. I've used their older 2-knob and 4-knob before. For some reason, I always had trouble dialing in I think it was the clipping knob or the input gain knob. Could never get that squared away. So, but maybe a year or two ago, I came back to Keeley and have just loved this pedal. It nails every sound you could possibly get. I always say if a pedal sounds great with everything at Noon, then that's a really, really easy place to start with. So I've got the sustain at Noon. I've got the blend up at Noon as well. And the way I think of that is I'm taking half of the available compression and blending it halfway in with my dry tone. The tone knob, I think, is more of a presence knob, so you're getting into more of the high frequency. So I just notched that back just a little bit to take out some of those super highs. And then I just set the level to be a very, very slight boost, so we have kind of a full clean tone. So let me get up just kind of a smaller verb, just so it's not super dry, and we can kind of take a listen to what the clean tone is. Here's the bridge pickup. And we'll flip to the neck. So really nice, really wide. Everything in stereo obviously helps with that, but the way I see clean tone is, like I said, I don't want to have to kick on 3 pedals or 4 pedals to get a usable sound. So that's my compression, and that's kind of my RC booster that I always stay on to get me there. With the Vox, it's a little difficult to get a low end that's stiff enough and doesn't kind of crap out on me. But my ideal clean tone is super full. I like a stiffer low end, so you can kick on some gain if you need it and it doesn't flub out. But I also like a mid-range and a high end that's kind of ready to go once you kick something on. So that's kind of the clean tone. The next pedal we'll look at is my Superbolt. This is my all-time favorite drive. I can't imagine ever getting rid of it. I just got it back from JHS, just had to have the foot switch replaced, but it's been on my board probably 3 or 4 years now, and it just kind of does everything for me. It does it can do the super bright, really airy thing, or it can be, it can clean up and kind of just be like a loud clean if you need it, if you can, roll the volume back on your guitar or something like that. But I just really, really love what it does. I'll pull up a song here, and I'll talk through, reverbs and all of that in a second. But just for some context, this will be Jeremy Riddle's version of At Your Name, just the guitar intro. So yeah, it goes all the way from that kind of dirty clean, I like to call it, to start off, and then you just put the boost on after it to wake it up for the full turnaround or the full intro, and It just sounds great. And if you want like a big E chord or something like that, and what I like most about it is it gives me the drive that I need without, getting too flubby in the low end or losing definition in the mid range or something like that. It stays really, really nice and tight. I know they designed this pedal to kind of do the old Supro amps or the old Valco amps kind of on 10, but I think it's the sounds that work best for me are keeping it pretty low gain. So I usually have volume straight up, the tone straight up. If it's a little bright, I'll roll that back, but it's usually fine. And then the drive around 9 o'clock or just a hair below. So yeah, that's my favorite drive. I guess that's my stage one. I don't really stack. I don't stack these two ever. The way I see drives is to really figure out what each one does well and then to just let the drive do that. I think when you start stacking too many pedals, even two for me, you start losing definition, and you only get some of the characteristics of both drives that are stacked. And so my approach to drives is to have one that sounds a bit more open, which would be the Superbolt, and then one that's a little bit more mid-rangey, a little bit more aggressive, and kind of just plays a different role. So we'll move on to the Benson. I actually just got this one in maybe a week or two ago. I used to have a kilt here, and maybe it's ear fatigue or whatever, just wanted to try something new. So got the Benson in here. It has a really, really cool sound. So I'll kind of do one last rake with the Superbolt, and then we'll switch over to the Benson. So you can hear it's just a little bit more aggressive. Again, I haven't really explored a lot of the really high gain sides or sounds on this pedal. There's a lot of low end in that pedal, so even though I want it to sound a little warmer, I pull out just a little bit of low end there. And to keep that definition, I'll keep the treble around noon. But have really loved that pedal. It kind of does the mid-rangey thing for me. Fills in the space that the Superbolt doesn't quite get. But I like that they sound unique enough to where they can just both kind of do their own thing and not step on each other's toes. All right, so next after the Benson, we have the Vertex Boost. I really, really like this pedal. A little pricey for just being a boost, but it's also how I run my volume. So if you look down at the Dunlop Mini down here, this is really acting as an expression pedal. There's no audio cables actually coming into the Dunlop, and so all that's running from the Dunlop is just one expression cable into the expression out of the Boost. A little hard to explain, but basically I'm using the Dunlop and the Vertex to control my volume via expression instead of having a volume pedal in the chain. If the Vertex is off, the volume works just like normal. If the Vertex is on, then heel all the way down is obviously off, and then heel all the way up is going to be as loud as the Vertex is set. So I really, really like this pedal. There's a song by Upper Room called Holy Spirit, and we'll kind of hit a really cool hook that they do on the turnaround in that song. But the way I have my amp set up is that if I keep the Vertex around 10 o'clock, it just turns my clean signal really loud. But if I move it with my foot kind of maybe over to 2 or 3 o'clock, it becomes more of the, slamming the front of the amp. And that's kind of my approach to gain. You'll see I don't run a ton of actual drive on my pedals. I've got the gain on the Benson and the Superbolt at 9 o'clock. If my amps sound great, I'd just rather hear more of them, to be honest. I don't want to take, a super clean amp and then throw you know, a gain pedal on 10 and call that my drive. So that keeps a lot of clarity while keeping that definition in body too. So let's throw on the boost there, and this will just kind of be like a standard clean boost. So that gets kind of like that really loud, clean tone. I love how that feels to play because it's not quite breaking up yet, but responds super well to pick attack and just responds well to the way you're playing. And since it sits after the two drives, it just takes what they're doing and makes it a lot louder. So I've experimented with having boosts in the front and after. I like the feel of having it after. Again, the way I kind of do drives is just let the drives do what they do, and if you need something bigger or louder, then just give it a signal boost after. Some people love the way boosts feel, you know, into the front of a drive or something like that. That gets a little spitty to me and a little hairy to me, so I just love how it sounds with the boost after. Next, we go to, I think, the way I have it routed now, I changed this maybe a week ago. I think the out of the boost goes into the input of a Goodwood Audition. That sits under my board. And that's so I can kind of like try out pedals. If I need to do anything with an effects loop, I can send my dry signal from there. And this is kind of the last non-wet or non-mod pedal. And then the out of the Audition comes into the input of this Neunaber Inspire. And this is one of my favorite chorus pedals I've ever heard. I've had a hard time with chorus pedals because I haven't typically run a lot of mods, so I haven't really been like a vibe guy or a chorus guy or anything like that. Most of my tones have been pretty straight up the last few years. But I heard, I think it was a clip from some song on YouTube that was like a stereo chorus pedal, and so I did some digging and found out about like tri-chorus and stereo tri-chorus. So Neunaber makes a really, really cool pedal that does all of that and a lot more. It has a really, really killer tri-chorus setting. It's got, I think, like 7 or 8 different settings. There's one setting that I, for the life of me, don't understand. It's this setting right here. And what it does is it's vibrato and chorus, but it's only vibrato for higher frequencies or higher notes. And then when you play lower down, it shifts into chorus. Have no idea how that works, but it sounds really cool. And if you go, we'll play that same upper room lick. And if you listen back, he's definitely got on some kind of mod. It sounds like a vibrato. So I'll play it without it, and then I'll kick it in, and we'll hear the difference. So you can hear how much that affects the actual part and how unique that sounds. And the fact that it's in stereo just gives it that super wide feel. And the one thing that's bugged me about chorus pedals before is that I always seem to lose a little bit of the snap or a little bit of the transients on the front end of the note. It just kind of eats it up and gets all chewy. And this has a mix knob. It's the top left knob. And so if it's feeling like it's just taking over my tone a little bit, then I can always back that down. Or if I want a really heavy effect, I can dial it in more. So really, really love that pedal. I'll show you the chorus tone as well. And this is super fun. This is just the standard tri-chorus sound. So that's one of my favorite sounds on that pedal. And that sound right there is literally the reason I got that pedal. It's instantly recognizable, but it doesn't take over your core tone. And even if that setting was a little heavy, like I said, you can dial that back. And that was with the drive and the boost, and you still just get that super, super smooth drive, but it's not super gainy or anything like that, so it stays nice and tight instead of kind of blowing up on you. So like I said, this is where I start running in stereo. So the left-right out of the chorus pedal will go into the left-right input of the timeline. And I'll kind of talk about these two pedals since a lot of people know what they do and some of the sounds they've got in them, the timeline and the Big Sky together. So the way I set up my wet effects is to just have them work together and not feel like they're completely independent. I always tell our team that we should have the wet effects that we're using on any given song should just make sense. If you're playing a faster lead line or a more driven opening song or something like that, that's probably not the time for the really, really big cloud reverb or something like that. All right, so we'll take a look first at just the delay. We'll do a quick hit just so we can see what just the delay sounds like, and then we'll do the same for the verb. And then the reverb. So obviously a bigger sound, and what we're really going for on that intro is just to make sure we take up the space we need. That hook really is the biggest thing in the mix. And it's kind of meant to soar out. So we'll see what that sounds like all put together. So obviously a really big sound. Everything, my approach to wet effects is that everything should come together and make sense. Like the drive pedals, the gain should be hitting the wet effects the right way. The wet effects should feel like one tone, not several pedals on trying to do the same thing or trying to do different things. Everything you click on, whether that's a big smearing, RV5 thing or a chorus pedal or anything like that, should all make sense within the tone. And I actually forgot to mention this pitchfork down here. This is basically an octave pedal for me. Kind of easy. Everyone knows what the octave up or octave down. I really use the octave down more often than the octave up. I just like the effect it gives. When you've got that octave down, we can kind of do an example of that right here. So here's without the octave. So that's just kind of a little more of a production thing you can throw on if you feel like you need it, or if you feel like you need to stand out in a higher line, you can or a higher lead line, you can throw the octave up on as well. So we'll move on. I've got, there's several settings I use as far as these two pedals go, I may do an individual timeline video or a reverb video or something like that. But I've changed my swell settings lately, just to kind of be a little bit more exciting. If I've got a heavier setting on in a song anyway, I'll just usually swell with that. But this is a pretty thick sound that I really, really like. And we'll throw the octave down on that as well. So that sounds really cool, really pretty. If you throw like a clean neck pickup on there, it can get really, really clean and airy. Or if you throw on a drive with some other stuff, you can get those really exciting kind of stadium swells. Last thing I want to touch on is the RV5, and you might be asking, well, you've got a Bigsky, why do you need an RV5? And that is because nothing else does the Bigsky, or nothing else does the RV5 sound. So of course, like everyone else, I leave this on the mod setting, and I really use this for two things. One is a super dark time all the way up, decay all the way up, and then mix at maybe like 11 or 12. And that's just kind of to act as like a bed, I guess. I don't use that a lot, but here's what that would sound like. So you really almost hear it more when you stop playing. And that's just like maybe I'm playing a slower song or like a slide part that just needs that dark reverb under it. But usually as far as those kind of reverbs go, the Bigsky usually covers it. What I really like using this for is almost as an overdrive. And I know that sounds weird, but I'll turn the mix up super high and the time down really, really short. And then I'll turn the tone way up. So it's basically super sizzly, almost annoying sounding, but it just makes the part you're playing really, really jump out. So we'll do that real quick. And on its own, that just sounds like this. So super bright, and we'll play like maybe a normal part. Let's say it's a big driven section. We'll turn the boost up a little bit, and I'll do kind of my normal settings, and then we'll throw on the RV5, and we'll see what that does. So it's kind of a fun trick just to add on top. Of course, you can get crazy with it and dial the mix up and the time and all of that, and that sounds really cool over swells. So we'll go back to that. And this is kind of where you can get those, I call them like Jesus Culture swells. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. That should be most of what I use all these pedals for. Again, and then we go the left-right out of the RV5, comes all the way across the board to the left-right in of the interfacer, and then that goes left-right out to whatever my amps are. So that should be about it. If you've got any questions, let me know below. I'll see you guys next time.